that would say that today's talk is going to be on Lord Shantinath. So that was a stavan sung by Sangamitra Sadhviji on Shantinath Bhagwan. So as we've done with the other Tirthankars recently, we've talked about Adeshwar Bhagwan, we've talked about Neminath Bhagwan. To understand the Tirthankars' life, we have to go into their previous lives. As you know, like within the Jain Tirthankars, 24 Tirthankars, there are a few Tirthankars which are very prominent. Adeshwar Bhagwan, Shantinath Bhagwan, Neminath Bhagwan, Parshvanath Bhagwan and Mahavir Swami Bhagwan. So if you look at the Tirthankars, the prayers which are composed, these 4 or 5 Tirthankars would have the most number of temples and stavans and prayers composed in the name. So Shantinath Bhagwan is very prominent because, as the name implies, it really denotes peace, bliss, happiness, which everyone at all times does require. So many of the prayers, obstacles aata hoy, problems aata hoy. So Shantinath Bhagwan is supposed to be sort of, people recite the name with sort of due reverence. So when we start with Shantinath Bhagwan's, we look at his first life. And Shantinath Bhagwan, if you look at the first life, it starts off with King Sri Sen. And as King Sri Sen, he had 2 wives, Abhinandita and Queen Shik Nandita. And during this time, King Sri Sen was a very pious king. So obviously, we can have different kinds of kings. Some kings are tyrants and notorious, but King Sri Sen was a very, very calm, sort of with due morality and conducting everything very peacefully. And as we'll see as the presentation goes along, Queen Abhinandita, this soul of Abhinandita, carries on with Shantinath Bhagwan for all the lives. Sometimes Abhinandita's soul will become like a son, someone like a brother, someone like a brother-in-law. And eventually, in the last life when Shantinath Bhagwan became a Tirthankar, Abhinandita's soul became the first Ganadhar, so the first chief disciple of Shantinath Bhagwan. So and it's kind of interesting to see how the soul is carrying forward, just going on and on until towards the end, and both achieve liberation towards the end. Now, when Abhinandita queen actually gave birth to 2 sons, Indusen and Bindusen. And as was common during those times, the kids were sent to Gurukul. That was a place where the princes would be sent so that they learned about all matters. They have to become very clever in terms of all the studies, in terms of warfare, in terms of how to lead a kingdom. So Gurukul was what we would call a modern day school right now. And they learned all the arts, skills, warfare, and everything was taught to the kids. So eventually the princes grow up, and a king of a neighboring kingdom, king of Koshambi, Bal, he says, now it's now time for this princess to get married. So he wants to send a proposal for one of his daughters. And the daughter was called Shrikant. And so he sends a proposal to King Sri Sen that, you've got 2 sons, but I would like to have a proposal for Indusen, one of the elder sons. So he actually sends his daughter, and together with a courtesan. So she accompanies like a maid. Both these princes saw them in the garden, and they were amazed. But what happened? Both the brothers, rather than getting attracted to the daughter of the king, they got attracted to the lady who was accompanying the princess, and sort of love at first sight. And this obviously would be quite common even in today's day and age, that there's a proposal for someone, but they actually get attracted to someone else. The attraction was so strong that both the brothers were starting to fight over this maid. I want to get married to her, I want to get married to her. So let alone the princess. Now both these brothers are fighting over a courtesan. The king was a bit dismayed that what are my sons up to? He comes onto the where they are and trying to convince. This is also very common. Although he's a king, he's got subjects. The subjects will be listening to him, but not his children. That happens to us right now. Once the kids are 18 or even earlier right now, that's it. You try to guide them, but if they don't listen, then they're on their own. The king tries very hard, saying, put some sense into them. What are you guys up to? Eventually, the king failed. He could not convince the two brothers, and the brothers were literally with swords, were fighting one another. The king was very, very dejected. He says, I've tried everything impossible, and it's a shame that my children are fighting over this. And the shock was great. And eventually, and the king was also very says, look, I'm a king and I've got duty towards my subjects. He says, what my children do, that's fine. But I'm even more worried about my kingdom. The fact that my children are going along this route here, that means morality is out of question. He could foresee that my children don't have any morality. If they don't have any morality, how are they going to rule this kingdom here? So my kingdom is now going to go into a state of decline. He could foresee this, that they can do whatever with their lives, but my whole kingdom is now going to be in a state of downward trend, because if they're going to be taking over with this kind of morality, both of them are not capable of running a kingdom. His sorrow was so great that when he actually came back to the palace, out of that shock, he died. And as the king died, then both the queens, again with the sorrow, they also both died. Now, this is again quite interesting to bear in mind, that shock and fear, even in today's day and age, can easily kill someone. So that is quite pertinent. And it's also said that, for example, that why don't we remember our previous births? And one of the reasons which is actually given, that at the time of our birth, if we did recollect our previous births, the sheer shock of many of the things which we did. If we did something great, then maybe we could have a lot of ego. That I did something great in my previous births. But more importantly, if we had that recollection of our previous births and imagining some of the horrific things which we all would have done, that shock in itself would kill us instantaneously. And it's actually for our own well-being that we don't actually have the recollection of our previous births. And I've read some books that Acharya Maharajis and some Sadhu Maharajis, through meditation, they walk you through, guide you through, that some people can get your knowledge of your previous births. But again, it has to be very controlled and guided, because they have to see that is your character very strong. If you did manage to get through your previous births, would you actually be able to sustain whatever you saw what's going on? So a Guru Maharaj will actually have to will assess that, okay, if you went to a Guru Maharaj saying, I would really want to know what my past birth was, and if they guided you through that advanced meditation technique, and if they did it, again, it has to be very controlled. So just to prove the point that the shock of what we did can kill someone. And this is exactly what happened, that the shock actually killed the king and both the queens. Now, as time went on, Indusen and Bindusen were just fighting, and sort of life was going on. At one point in time, obviously the parents have died. Some Sadhu Maharaj or some saintly being came there and actually was saying, what are you brothers up to? Why are you fighting over this lady here? And look at this, at the shock of it, your parents have actually even passed away. And obviously he was a learned Guru Maharaj. He says, do you remember that, who is this lady you're fighting over? Did you know who it is? This maid you're fighting over? They said, no, we don't know who she is. We just got attracted to her. He says, let me tell you your past life. So the Sadhu Maharaj comes and says, at once upon a time, there was a king who was called Chakravarti Ratnadhwaja, and he had two queens, Kanakshri and Hema Malini. I'm not making this up, this is in the scriptures. So, both these brothers, they were actually the sons of Kanaklata and Padmalata. And Hema Malini had actually got a daughter who was called Padma. She had actually become a nun. And as she became a nun, she saw a scene somewhere that there was actually a prince of a neighboring kingdom fighting over another princess, that I really want to win her heart. And as a nun, she was actually quite amazed. She says, amazing, what kind of beauty has this princess got, that there's a king from a neighboring kingdom trying to fight. He wants to do everything just because of the beauty of this. And as a nun, she's thinking, oh, I wish I had such beauty, that I would have people sort of going after me with this kind of beauty. So even as a nun, she made the nidan. Nidan means that the mental conception, that I wish, and what did she say? That I wish that as a result of all the tap I've done as a nun, I wish I can get some beauty like this in the future, so that someone can actually get attracted with my beauty. So that was actually a wrong thing which she could have done. Okay, abaddu fruits of all the things which I've done, all the top and everything I've done, let I get such kind of beauty. So and that was actually this maid who was born in the later life. So essentially, the lady you are fighting over is none other than your sister, because in a way she's like a stepsister. And they should really, oh really? That this lady the maid who we actually fighting over is actually our sister. Oh, what a bad thing that we did. And so then they remembered and they repented for their sins, but it was too late for their parents. As we go along with these stories, this history of Shantinath Bhagwan was written by Acharya Hemchandra. And when you actually read through the stories, it actually becomes very confusing, and even confusing for me, because what happens is that as the story goes along, they start describing the past lives of other people. So suppose we're in this room here and we meet each other. So they'll talk about my past life, and then they'll talk about your past life, and then it's like relations that relations become such so complex that your mind just gets, okay, how do I remember where is the relation going on? So some of these stories can become quite complicated because you just do not, they go back into every person's and what the connection is. But more importantly, what it shows that everything, there's some connection. Nothing is randomness. Any strange, anything, all events has to have some kind of connections in the past. So that was the first birth. Then Shantinath Bhagwan, as you can imagine, that the story goes that when as a king he would die, he would then be born in the heavens, Devlokma. After that Devlok, he would then be born again as a king Amitej. So the next incarnation of Shantinath Bhagwan was King Amitej's incarnation. So in this birth, the father was Jwalana Jatin, two wives, Arka Kirti and wife Jyotirmala. So Sri Sen's soul, who is Shantinath Bhagwan, was born as Amitej. And he married Shiki Nandita's soul. So Shiki Nandita was his previous life's wife. So that was his wife. So he actually married Shiki Nandita's soul, who was called Jyoti Prabha in this birth. She was called Jyoti Prabha. Now, Jyotirmala had actually given a birth to another lady called Satyabhama soul. And so she became a younger sister of Shantinath Bhagwan, who is now called Amitej in this birth here. So now let's look at who is Satyabhama. Where does she come into the picture? Who is she? We haven't seen who she is. Now, in the previous birth of King Sri Sen, there used to be a learned Brahmin. And the Brahmin was called the Dharanjit Brahman, who had a wife called Yashobhadra. Now, this learned Brahmin, he had a maid, and he actually had an affair with that maid, and through that affair, he actually had an illegitimate child, and who was called Kapil. So the maid was called Kapil, and can you imagine that what we see here is actually quite common in this society right now. All these kind of things which were happening so many millions of years ago are quite common. So this learned Brahmin had an illegitimate child with a slave girl. Now, obviously, because he was an illegitimate child, the learned Brahmin would not welcome him into the house. It was like a secretive affair. So the Kapil would learn things from his father, not directly like the father's love, but indirectly. So if the father is teaching someone else, he would be sitting around, loitering around, so like kind of a neglected child, and he would be picking up things from his father. Obviously, he became quite learned and intelligent by picking things from his father. And then he decided to go to foreign lands, because like right now I don't have the respect of my father, so for me to have my future, he decided, let me go to some distant lands. He went to a neighboring country. People saw that, wow, we've got a learned person coming over, and he joined a school where they were teaching Vedas, Vedic knowledge. Became a very good teacher, and the headmaster of that school then told his wife that, this guy has been working here in our school for quite some time, seems to be very learned and knowledgeable, and we've got a daughter, so I think it's about time that it would be a good thing that we get our daughter married to him. So wife agreed, so they married his daughter Satyabhama to this Kapil. Life goes on, and once what happened, Kapil went to watch a late night show, very late night show, by himself. When he was coming back, it was raining quite hard. There was a downpour of rain. And when it sort of rained so hard, just as he was approaching his house, he quickly changed his clothes and then rang the doorbell. So that means he's all dry. So obviously his wife Satyabhama opened the door, and she was quite surprised. She says, "Oh wow, Kapil, that it's been raining so hard. You come late at night. but it's interesting to see that you're all dry. And Kapil, with all the knowledge of my Vedic knowledge, this power could actually, look at this, my clothes are all dry. So he says, this is the power of the knowledge which I have. But ladies now are intelligent, even in those times even more intelligent. So Kapil thought that, the Satyabhama thought, it's amazing, if this guy's got such an interesting knowledge of Vedic knowledge, his clothes are dry, but his hair and everything is wet. What uses of this knowledge, of his Vedic knowledge, that he keeps his clothes dry, but his whole entire hair and everything is all wet? This guy, I can't believe that story. He's just changed his clothes. It's not because of his knowledge of the Vedic knowledge. He's just literally changed his clothes, because if he had the knowledge of his Vedic knowledge, then his hair, he would be dry all over. Yeah. So she started doubting him, that this guy is not as straight as I think he is. So eventually, as time goes on, Kapil's father, the story goes quite long, that his father, the learned Brahmin, he became quite poor. And then he found out that my son Kapil has become quite prosperous, he's a teacher. So he actually came to the town with his father. And that's a time when Satyabhama says, can you please tell me the story of this Kapil? And she found out that this guy is actually an illegitimate child. And then at that time, Satyabhama, she didn't like him anymore. So what did she say? I want to file for divorce. Obviously, Kapil says, no, I don't want to. He says, you're the apple of my eye, I love you, all this kind of story. But she says, no, I just can't stand you anymore now. You've been very deceptive. And I can't stay with a person who is like this. So eventually, she came to a point, breaking down point, says, you know what, I'll have to commit suicide, but I just can't stay with you. So then they said, okay, why don't you do this? Let's go to the king and for a resolution. So they went to King Sri Sen. They told the entire story to King Sri Sen. He sympathized with her and said that, look, Kapil, it's her wish. She doesn't want to stay with you anymore. So I think it's about right that you just leave her alone and you lead your separate lives. He said no. The king couldn't do anything more, and Satyabhama was actually then saying that I'm going to take my life. So the king says that's actually quite a serious thing to do. So he then told Kapil, why don't you do this? For some time, why doesn't Satyabhama stay in my palace? She can become like one of the assistants to my queen. She can help my queens, and time will heal. Let's see what happens after a little bit of time. So that's the time, so he agreed to that. Okay, fine, if my Satyabhama has to stay with the king, let her stay there for quite some time. And as you know, in the previous birth, the king died and out of the shock, and both the queens died. Satyabhama, as one of the assistants to the queens, she also died because she got so involved with the queens that the shock of the king dying and both the queens dying, she also died. And so therefore, there's an indirect connection of Satyabhama. So that Satyabhama now becomes Shantinath Bhagwan's sister. So as you can see that everything is so interconnected. So in this birth here right now, so his sister now actually marries King Sri Vijay. And who is Sri Vijay? King Sri Vijay is Abhinandita. So therefore Abhinandita, that was the second wife of Shantinath Bhagwan in his first birth. So Sri Vijay is now actually become his brother-in-law, because his sister's husband. So now what happens is that Sri Vijay, who is Shantinath Bhagwan's brother-in-law, and Queen Sutara, who is that Satyabhama, that Brahman's daughter, they're going for a walk in a garden. And as they're going in a garden, now when you read these stories, there is one term which comes quite common, which is Vidyadhar. Now Vidyadhar, to many people would seem like science fiction, but you have to sort of believe in it. What it means is there were groups of people who had certain powers at that stage. Powers meaning so that you would be born as a human, but because of your meditation techniques or anything, you would have certain powers, which means you could fly in the air. And we have stories wherever, even Acharya Maharaj, when we say Palitana was actually, the name Palitana comes from the Acharya Maharaj Pataliputra. And Pataliputra was actually an Acharya Maharaj, and his devotion to pilgrimages was so great that it is actually said in the scriptures that he actually had the power of flying. And what he would do daily, say, I want to go to Palitana, I want to go to Girnar, I want to go to Summit Shikhar, he would be able to fly and actually go for the pilgrim places. That was his devotion to do jatras. So the name Palitana actually comes from Pataliputra. So we have incidences in our scriptures whereby Acharya Maharajis and certain people you could be able to fly. So and I think we have to believe in it. Like, for example, 300 years ago, if you told people that you could fly in helicopters or planes, they wouldn't believe you. They would not believe in the mobile technology right now. You could Skype to people. Like even a few years ago, speaking to our own grandparents was a big problem. Like we used to trunk call from us. So how things have moved on. So on the same note, there were these groups of people who could fly in the air. So the person who was flying in the air was that Kapil, that illegitimate son of the Brahman. And because of the previous connection of his attraction towards Satyabhama, he got attracted. This lady, I think I do know her. I quite like her. So what did he do? Because of his skills and because of the power which he had, he was known as a Vidyadhar. So he now took the form of a deer. So Satyabhama now actually sees a deer in the garden and tells the king, "Oh king, I like this deer. Can you please get the deer for me?" So the king now is actually going to capture the deer. But obviously the deer was an illusion. So the king goes there, and suddenly and meanwhile the Vidyadhar comes from behind and kidnaps the queen Sutara. Obviously the king goes there, and eventually, and then what he does, he was quite clever. He then actually created an illusion of the queen. So the king went there, the deer was running away, and he couldn't capture the deer. So when he came back, the Vidyadhar actually created an illusion of Sutara as though she was dying. So the king actually got quite again shocked. Oh, I went to chase after deer, but here is my queen. She's actually now died. Look at her. Maybe some wild animal killed her or something. And he got into a state of shock. But look at his love for the queen. He says, now life is useless for me. He says, my queen has died. He's now thinking, I should now take my own life. I can't live anymore. He says, I'd rather die. So he's actually now going, almost preparing for a funeral pyre. He says, now I'll just... The wives used to jump after the husbands, but here is the exact opposite. Now the king is actually now saying, I'll jump into the fire because my wife has died. So he's deciding to do that, but at the same time what happens is, Shantinath's Bhagwans, there were some people that there was a Vidyadhars, so they were flying in the air. So there were some learned or people with certain powers, and they're saying, what are you doing here, king? He says, I'm now going to die. He says, why are you going to die? He says, my wife has died, and there's nothing more for me to do in life. Then the Vidyadhar says, oh, you're actually being duped. He says, what do you mean? He says, your wife is actually not killed. There's this Vidyadhar with some magical powers, he's actually kidnapped your wife. He says, oh, really? So now he says, okay, now where is this Vidyadhar? Let me go and find him. I need to get my queen back. I'll carry forward with that story, but just to look at King Sri Vijay's story, Sri Vijay. It's a little bit of a side story, but look at let's look at the character of King Sri Vijay. So Sri Vijay is Shantinath Bhagwan's brother-in-law. Once someone told that there's going to astrologer came and told King Sri Vijay, in 7 days' time there's going to be severe lightning, and that lightning is going to kill the king. So all the ministers, they all convened assembly, everyone got together, and they decided, now what's going to happen? He says, 7 days time, a thunderbolt will kill the king. So then they decided, what should we do? Then they said, let's actually get someone else as a king. All the ministers, they decided what to do. But then King Amitabh says, if the light of bolting is going to kill a king, why would I want to place someone else? Because that other person is going to die. He says, I can't do that. He says, that's not fair. Then they decided, what should we do? This thinking. Eventually they decided, why don't you do this? Let's just create a statue of you, and we'll keep that statue as a king. So that statue, everyone will go to the statue, and that becomes a king. And that's what they decided. And after 7 days, the lightning came, destroyed the statue, and the king was saved. But the moral of the story was that even at the sake of his life, he did not want to get someone else killed. So that just shows that what kind of kings they were with such strong conviction. So now what's happening is, eventually they find this Vidyadhar. The Vidyadhar is the person who has kidnapped the king's wife, Sutara. When they find him, look, this Vidyadhar actually had a lot of powers. So they're actually fighting a war, and then what happens is, in the war, they say, here he is Vidyadhar. They go there and they chop him into two. So he's killed. But then because of the power, his two pieces will become four. And then if you it's like amoeba, like a reaction. So but four pieces, if you kill them or hit them with a sword, those four become 8. And eventually on the whole battlefield, you could just see images of him everywhere. That people just do not know, who should I fight? Should I fight him or him? Because they're all like clones of him. See, can you imagine this kind of problem faced with the Ministry of Defense or of the US Army? They just get totally duped, like going into the army and you just replicating yourself 20 times, 40 times, each doubling every single time. Eventually they found that this is no way we can capture him. So Shantinath Bhagwan then said, I now need to help my brother-in-law. He now does a lot of meditation, and through that meditation he now gets special power. So when he comes through that special power, he then now throws this special power, like something like a fire at him. Now he realizes that this is something strong, that all my tricks will not help me anymore. So he's now running for his life. He's running. Eventually, when he is running, he actually comes into the assembly for Tirthankar. So the person, when he comes to the assembly of Tirthankar, that power which Shantinath Bhagwan threw in the Tirthankar's assembly, nothing can affect it. So that power goes back. And eventually Shantinath Bhagwan and everyone, they all come in that assembly, and now they are listening to the Tirthankar's message. Anger and malice keep a soul burning birth after birth. It can get peace only through forgiveness. When they heard this, Shantinath Bhagwan, that Vidyadhar, that Pandit's son, everyone got some sense. They all repented with whatever deeds they did, and then decided to lead a pious life. Sixth incarnation. So after that king, again he would be born into Devlok. After Devlok, again he would be coming into the earth. Again, Shantinath Bhagwan, he was now Aparajit in this incarnation. His father was King Smiti Sagar, Vasundhara and Anudhara were the two queens, and soul of Amitej or Shantinath Bhagwan became Aparajit, and soul of Sri Vijay. So Sri Vijay was his brother-in-law, who in his first birth was Abhinandita, his wife. So they both like brothers. Now we are looking at the next incarnation. So Vajrayudh. In this incarnation, Shantinath Bhagwan became a Chakravarti. Now Chakravarti is as important a title as a Tirthankar. Chakravartis are in our historical literature universal monarchs. So they're like Napoleon or anyone who someone wants to really conquer, and they really get vast pieces of land. So here he got married, and again a very pious king. And what's very interesting with this story here is that not only do they become kings, but after the end of their the reign, they actually now decided, look, I've achieved everything in this world to achieve. What next? And then he decides to become a monk, become a sadhu. And I think it's quite amazing to realize okay, when people were such kings and everyone to renounce and actually become monks and nuns. The next incarnation, this is the most famous incarnation of Shantinath Bhagwan. Depicted in many temples and everywhere. Shantinath Bhagwan in this birth was born as Meghrath. He was actually a king, and he was doing Poshad. Poshad is something very similar. Pajushanatu, a lot of people at Navnath did Poshad. So it's a time when you stay like a monk and a nun for a certain period of time, Poshad. So he's doing Poshad, and during his Poshad, he's actually giving some kind of discourse or giving some kind of lecture, to the people there. And suddenly, a bird, actually a dove, comes and sits on his lap. Now, it sounds a bit sort of strange, but the dove was actually speaking. So the dove, trembling with fear, said, King, please protect me. He says, why? What do you want protection from? He says, there's actually a hawk who is chasing after me and he wants to kill me. So the hawk actually also comes there. So Shantinath Bhagwan says, anyone who comes with me will get peace. But look at what is the hawk saying? The hawk is saying, look, the hawk is telling Shantinath Bhagwan, or Meghrath, saying, the dove is taking protection from you. I understand that you are protecting the dove. I'm suffering also, I'm a hawk. I'm hungry. So why don't you look after my interests? And that's quite a legitimate thing to ask. It's like a dilemma. That I've got a stomach to fill, so why are you just being partisan? Why are you just taking his favor that you want to say, he's like, what about my hunger? I'm actually quite hungry. So why are you taking sides? Who should I go to protection for? You're protecting the dove, but where should I go for protection for? Because I'm hungry. And then quite interesting question which the hawk is asking. Shantinath Bhagwan says, fair enough, I understand your predicament, but this dove has come to me for protection, so I'll actually protect it. If you want to have your food, let's do this. I will give you the same amount of whatever is the weight of this dove. You can take that same flesh out of my body, and you can eat that. And so he says, just take so he asks his ministers, get a knife and take chunk of flesh from me and feed it to the hawk. All the ministers are wondering, King, are you actually gone mad? For the sake of a mere dove, are you going to give up your life? And then everyone's, it's like a big meeting here. So what is this king up to? He says, no, I've made up a decision that he wants it. So, and through some power and some of this, what used to happen, so they put a balance here. They put the dove there, and he's just taking his chunks of flesh there. And through Davies used to sometimes create some kind of problems. So the weight of the dove was actually kept on increasing. So rather than being 1 kilo, it becomes 2 kilos, becomes 4 kilos. So essentially, Shantinath Bhagwan has to actually cut more of his flesh to balance the weight. After quite some time, this was like a test of his purity. Davies from the heavens came angels and saying, "What are you up to? We were taking a test of you, and we now realize that you are someone with a very strong heart, and we forgive ourselves because we were putting it through a test." And eventually, all the through their powers, his body all became well. So that was one example of what kind of compassion which Shantinath Bhagwan had. A very striking example which is in scriptures and it is depicted everywhere. So this is one of the very interesting examples of what kind of compassion which Shantinath Bhagwan had. There's another story of the cocks which I'll go a bit later on because I think we've got about 10 more minutes. This is the birth which Shantinath Bhagwan actually bound his Tirthankar Nam Karma. As you know, that all Tirthankars actually it's a form of karma. And in this karma, after his reign as a king, he now decided to become a sadhu and goes into the develop. But when he actually became a monk, quite interesting, the Devi from heavens could see that this soul of Shantinath Bhagwan, this soul of Shantinath Bhagwan is going to become a future Tirthankar. So the Devis from heavens are actually bowing down to Shantinath Bhagwan who is on earth. So the queens of the Dev in heavens are saying, "What are you doing? Why are you sort of bowing down to someone who is on earth?" That's quite strange. So the Dev in heaven is saying that this soul is special. Says this soul is going to become a future Tirthankar. He's a sadhu right now, but look at his conviction. He's a very firm, balanced mind person. So the Devis in heaven, they could not believe it. So they said, okay, if that's what you say. So the Devis actually came down on earth. And as Shantinath Bhagwan was meditating, they were creating lots of different illusions. Different ladies dancing and trying to distract his meditation. And can you imagine that we are talking of not mere mortals like us, but they are Dev and Devis, and what kind of beauty they might have is beyond our imagination. And in spite of all that attraction, Shantinath Bhagwan was unnerved. When he was firm, says he's taken as a vow, as a diksha, I'm not going to marry, I'm going to lead a celibate life. Nothing is going to deviate me from that goal. And after all what they did, they really also then bowed down. Says we did a test on Shantinath Bhagwan. Shantinath Bhagwan did not fail. And so then so in the third picture they actually bow down to Shantinath Bhagwan. So that's towards the end of Shantinath Bhagwan. So now we are coming to his actual birth of Shantinath Bhagwan. His mother is getting the usual dreams. The soul of Shantinath Bhagwan is going to be born. Now, Shantinath Bhagwan's father was actually called, his father was called Vishwasen. Now, at that time, there was actually severe problems in the kingdom. Drought, people were suffering, and can you imagine that as a king, they've got all the powers. They can do everything possible. But here comes a natural calamity whereby even the king is helpless. What can I do? There's severe suffering. And the king was so in despair. Not only am I suffering, but all my subjects are suffering. Then the king decided, this has now come to a problem whereby I'm so helpless. And what does the king decide to do? His father? I think I'm now going to fast unto death. If there are subjects of mine who are suffering, who are not getting food to eat, how can I be in my palace and eat food? So he says, I can't eat food, so I am now going to fast unto death. It's now very important to see here that sometimes people can say, when we get problems in life, oh, mari jaungi. That's escapism. Here is someone who says, I want to give up my life, but out of the pure feelings. The feelings of, that how can I eat? My subjects are suffering. I don't care what's going to happen to my life. If I die, I die. And it's that feeling. So if the person is going to die in this state here, this is not suicide, this is not anything. He's dying in a state of pure feelings. And I mean, this is a separate topic, but when people say salekna, people are mercy killing. When sadhu there are quite a few instances in our religion when people say towards the tail end that now I want to, my life has now come towards an end, enough is enough. My body has served its purpose, now I need to move on, and they give on. So it's sort of bordering toward that state. So this does not constitute as something who is now escapism. Oh, there are too many problems. So it's very important to bear that in mind, that this is exactly what the king was saying, that now I can't bear this, and because there are no powers which I can do to help my subjects. So the only thing I can do is sympathize with them, and if they're not eating, I'll also not eat. I'll also starve. So that's a time when Devis came from heaven. And they're saying, what's going on? They're telling the Devi. And they said, so then they actually tell the queen, why is the king taking such a decision of fasting unto death? When there's a soul in your stomach who is the abode of peace, and that soul inside, why is the king taking this soul here, this soul of Shantinath Bhagavan who is in your womb, he's going to enable that there's going to be peace all over. So then the Devi said, why don't you do this? Just because the soul of Shantinath Bhagavan is in your womb, why don't you just recite some Nokar mantra, and not Nokar mantra, and then she recited Shanti, what we recite right now, Shanti. So she's holding her hands, she's reciting the Shanti, and with that water, she's sprinkling that water through all the people in the subject. So all her Dhamma, she's just spreading that water of that Shanti. And all the problems then started going away. So that's the time since when we started reciting the Shanti. Nani Shanti and Muti Shanti, that's when the Shanti is being recited for. Obviously, the soul of Shantinath Bhagavan is born. And obviously, as his name implies, Shanti, because there was peace throughout the kingdom, that's why he was called Shantinath Bhagavan. Shanti, that was his name. There was peace which went all over. Shantinath Bhagavan, as he grew older, he was actually married to 96,000 princesses. 96,000. It seems a bit, look, but we are now talking of a long time ago, when this was quite common, and rather than getting bogged down into, why 96,000, I think a more pertinent question is, in spite of having 96,000 princesses, how could he then take Diksha and become a Tirthankar? I think that's a much more important question than to dwell upon the fact that why did he have 96,000 princesses? So he had 96,000 princesses. And Shantinath Bhagavan is again quite unique, that he actually became a Chakravarti in this birth itself. Very few Tirthankars, in fact, Shantinath, Shantinath Bhagavan, they were, and I think one more Bhagavan, there were only three Tirthankars who in their own birth they actually became Chakravartis. So having two titles. So in that birth itself, he became a sovereign of 6 continents. So he's like a universal monarch. And after that, he actually became a Tirthankar in that same very birth. So here he is actually crowned as a Chakravarti. People are all happy that now he's become a prince, 96,000 princesses, he's now become a universal monarch. If I now tell you war, what are the things what are the words which, if I told you war, can you just give me some description? What is war associated with? Death. Hatred.
Pain.
Sorry?
Pain.
Pain. Bloodshed. What's unique about Shantinath Bhagavan, as a Chakravarti, obviously he now has to go to different lands. He has to now, in many Chakravartis, they go, they fight, and they conquer all the pieces of land. Shantinath Bhagavan was quite unique. The moment he actually went to conquer, he goes to the neighboring kingdom. Look, and this is where Anekantwad is, again, a very classic example of where Anekantwad actually comes into play. He goes there, and the king then decides, Shantinath Bhagavan has come here. Everyone is about him. He's a very powerful king. We are no match to him. But what happens is, rather than fight, what they said is, quite humbly, Shantinath Bhagavan, you're the universal kingdom, we abide by your wishes. And we don't want any war. And let's look at it this way. When you buy a house right now, either it's a freehold, and then it's your house, or you could have a leasehold for 999 years, 1,000 years. Technically, does that make any difference? And someone says, okay, I'm going to sell a house to you for 1,000 years, and you have to pay £1 ground rent every year. £1, nominal token. Does that make any difference to your ownership? It makes no difference. These kings actually thought the same thing. That, you know what? Nothing is going to change. Yes, Shantinath Bhagwan has become our king. On pieces of paper it says that we are now all part of his universal kingdom, but day to day nothing changes. We are still going to be ruling our own kingdom, but after all we are all subjects of Shantinath Bhagwan. So it is that frame of mind. Whereas as opposed to, there could be other kings who could say, I don't care, even if I'm a king of this small square piece of land, I'm the king here. How dare he comes and conquers me? Then it's war. Here, it's a different state of mind. And wherever Shantinath Bhagwan went, there was not a single bloodshed. All the kings duly subjected to him. Shantinath Bhagwan, tamai aavo cho, fair enough. You want to become? Fine. And Shantinath Bhagwan, again being a just king, yes, he's become a universal monarch, but there's no unjust. Yes, you are the king, you carry on with your own kingdom. It's almost like Hong Kong. Hong Kong became part of Britain, now it's part of China. Hong Kong carries on as it is. Doesn't matter whose ownership it goes to, whether it's China or England. Hong Kong just goes on as it is. So that's how it went with. So there was not a single bloodshed which was shed. Shantinath Bhagwan in this birth year, he actually then decided that neighboring kingdoms, neighboring kingdom, not his kingdom. There's actually a severe drought. Shantinath Bhagwan says, open up all my coffers of grains of my kingdom. I cannot bear to see any animals or anyone suffering. Whoever is under my reign, be the neighboring kingdom, everyone should be taken care of. And here he is, he's offering food and everyone to animals, to people of all different, neighboring kingdoms. There is happiness all over. People are all in a joyous mood. So Shantinath Bhagwan is an abode of peace. In his reign, there was peace, peace, and peace. So this is where the war comes in. Shantinath Bhagwan, after he's now become a universal monarch, he's now conquered everything. He then decides nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. In fact, there's actually a rule that, again, it's a mythological, as you can believe. When someone becomes a Chakravarti, there is actually a rock inscription. And the Chakravarti will go and write his name, that Shantinath Bhagwan has now become a Chakravarti here. And what happens is that the previous Chakravarti's name is actually erased and his name comes in. So it's like you're etching your name and the previous Chakravarti's name is actually wiped away. So imagine I have now become a universal monarch. My name is etched here, Shantinath Bhagwan. I have become this. But one day, someone else is going to become a Chakravarti and my name is also going to be wiped out. What use is this of me becoming a universal monarch? What use is this? Nothing is permanent. Even this title of mine as being a universal monarch is not permanent. And in that contemplation he says, if that's not permanent, what is permanent? My soul is permanent. And that contemplation says, now I want to give this up. So after conquering the entire universe, imagine, billionaire, millionaire, trillionaire, you've conquered USA, Russia, everything's under your belt. And at that stage he says, okay, I've now conquered everything, there's nothing else left to conquer, now I want to give it up. He decides, as is common with all Tirthankars, they do a Varsitan. One year before they take Diksha, they just do total, Mahavishnu Bhagwan did it, Shantinath Bhagwan did it. For 1 year, they just donation. The coffers are open. Whoever comes into the kingdom, you just take. Just peace, and then it's signs of giving. Just giving everything. So Varsidan. Varas year, and Dan is just donation. I mean, just contemplation for us. Is it easy to relinquish that power, wealth? He's now becoming a sadhu. He's deciding to take Diksha. As he's meditating, can you imagine that picture there? Snakes, elephants, lions, everyone's coming there. Peace. Intense enmity between even animals, tiger and cat, or deer and a lion, it all goes away. So that's under Shantinath Bhagwan reign. So there was just peace, and peace. And then so Shantinath Bhagwan is, we'll see that after his he got Kevalgnan, and with Kevalgnan, so it's just peace. As you can see, peace radiates, enmity recedes, ahimsa prevails, calmness spreads, and equanimity emanates. And he got Kevalgnan. Now, when he got Kevalgnan, Shantinath Bhagwan was also giving stories, just the way we are giving stories right now. Shantinath Bhagwan, in his own pravachan, when he's giving a pravachan, he also was describing through examples. And Shantinath Bhagwan was actually saying, once upon a time, there was a tree with lots of fruits there. And whenever people used to pass by, they used to get quite hungry, and they used to have these pieces of fruit from the tree. And every time they eat these fruits, everyone dies. So, yeah. So once what happens is the king came here. And once when the king came here, someone said, "Oh king, don't eat the fruits of this tree here, because if you eat the fruits of this tree, you'll also die." So what does the king say? If this tree is like poisonous and the fruits of this tree are actually killing everyone, you take the tree and destroy it from its roots. This tree cannot exist. You should destroy the tree from its roots. So what is the moral? And what is the moral of the story here? Passions are also like a poisonous tree, and fruits are like Krodh, Man, Maya, Lobh. So if you cut the kashais from its roots, then you obtain everlasting peace. So giving an example of how we should remove our ego and passions, this was an example even which Shantinath Bhagwan used for in his pravachan after he got Keval Jnana. Shantinath Bhagwan then goes to Samit Shikhar, and from Samit Shikhar he then goes to Moksha. So then, to summarize Shantinath Bhagwan's life was of 100,000 years, and again his life was in quarters. 25% of his life, so it's 25,000 years of his life was spent in youth, 25,000 years of his life was spent as a sovereign king, 25,000 years as a Keval Jnani, as a sadhu, and then 25 years as a Keval Jnani before he actually went into moksha. This is just a kind of that's Shantinath Bhagwan. This very nice mantra, peace mantra, which you can look at the following YouTube website. There are also a lot of prayers dedicated to Shantinath Bhagwan. Moti Shanti, Nani Shanti, Santi Karam, Ajit Shanti. Ajit Shanti, as the name says, is on for two Tirthankars, Ajitnath Bhagwan, which is the second Tirthankar, and Shantinath Bhagwan. And there are very many other prayers, but these are some of the sort of more important prayers on Shantinath Bhagwan. That's it. Jai Jinendra.